Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Speak Plainly podcast, where we speak plainly about things that matter. I'm your host, Owl Medicine, and today we're going to talk about strengthnesses. What is a strengthness? It sounds made up. Is that even real? Why do I care? Why do I care what a strengthness is? And is that ever going to be useful? Those are a few of the questions that you might and probably should have right now, because it is a super made up word because I made it up. But it's a really important word because it is a core concept of my book. So the reason I'm doing a podcast on it today is because, when well understood, talking about strengthnesses is a really efficient way to communicate how this very complex process of stimulation, growth, and anticipation of future stimulation forms our psychology. So, strengthnesses. What is a strengthness? A strengthness is a weakness and a strength combined. Pretty simple, right? And I already told you is real because I made it up and it's in my book. So why do you care about strengthnesses? The reason that you should care about strengthnesses is because not everybody has one. In fact, most healthy people who didn't have really traumatic events in their early life or face a chunk of adversity that really challenged them, and challenged is a very kind way of putting it, they don't have strengthnesses. They have attributes. And the Oxford Dictionary classifies an attribute as a quality or feature regarded as a characteristic or inherent part of something or someone. And strengthnesses I define as a defining attribute, or an attribute that involves itself in situations in which it doesn't belong or is not helpful. So yes, they're real, and the reason they're a core concept of the book is because the book is specifically for people who have had an unfair amount of adversity in their life. It's for those of us who had a really, really rough time, because your strengthness is kind of your superpower. If you've ever met anybody who, when they first met you in the first conversation, they told you that they had a superpower, they are probably highly traumatized, and their superpower that they're referring to is probably a strengthness. And there's a reason for that. Like I said, your strengths and weaknesses combined into one is a strengthness, and not everybody has them, but we all do have attributes, and it's kind of like an attribute, but it's like an attribute plus some. So the attributes that we have are pieces of our personality, and they develop over time. They develop over stimulation and over interactions with the world, starting with very, very little personality as a newborn on day one, and growing into being really, really old and finally arriving at the life that we deserve at like 70 or 80 or 90 or whatever. People have lots of personality, and they really don't care whether you like it or not. That's the awesome part about old people. I love it. But those attributes are there in everybody. Strengthnesses are the attributes that we leaned on over and over and over and over again during traumatic times and traumatic experiences to help protect us. That overuse, that chronic use, then makes that strengthness develop more and more and more. Just like any muscle, if you work your bicep out, it's going to get bigger and stronger and bigger and stronger. The same thing happens for these aspects of our psychology. So for those of us who experienced chronic stress, one of the things that happens, this chronic stress, means you're constantly on the lookout for things to go bad, right? You're constantly braced for that stress, and you are looking for ways to mitigate the stress, even at a very young age. Before you could ever pronounce or spell the word mitigate, you were definitely doing that, trying to prevent more stress. That encourages the growth and development of the threat system and the threat response system. And the threat evaluation and response part of the brain is the amygdala. So if you think of it as a knob, every time that we interact with the world, certain parts of us get stimulated by certain interactions. If you're with your mom, she turns a certain knob, usually has a couple of different knobs that she can turn. And you work with your boss and something goes wrong and that knob gets cranked up. And as an adult, we have the opportunity to turn that knob back down. And that is handled by our prefrontal cortex. That's the part of our brains that do executive function and kind of do the top-down ruling of, yeah, I understand that you want to react this way, but that's going to get you fired. So maybe not do that. That whole thought process belongs to the prefrontal cortex, and that has a two-way communication between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, which is that threat response and activation center. When the amygdala is activated strongly, that two-way response system becomes a one-way response. And it's not the prefrontal cortex down, it goes from the amygdala out. Those of us who have lots of childhood adversity or adversity early in life, our amygdalas are measurably larger. They can take an MRI or an fMRI of your brain, and they can measure, not necessarily with a ruler, but you get the point, a size difference in our threat response system as opposed to everybody else's. So your strengthness probably has a lot to do with making sure that you were safe. And whatever way that you made sure that you were safe as a child is going to be one of your strengthnesses. Some people have one, some people have more than one, some people don't have any at all, and they're just regular old attributes, and they are, to me, happy, boring people. I still haven't decided if I would rather be a happy, boring person or a happy, not boring person. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm not. But this knob analogy is really useful because we all know that certain people can push our buttons and certain people know how to crank our dials, especially siblings. If you have any siblings, nobody on the face of the planet knows how to push your buttons like a baby brother or a baby sister. And those knobs get bigger the more they get used. And up into the age of 25, when somebody cranks on a knob, we really have a real rough time. It's mostly impossible. From in the early 20s, it's a little bit more possible to crank our own knobs back down. But because the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until the age of 25, when something in life comes and cranks up a knob and we can't turn it back down, we're kind of just at the mercy of whatever our environment is. And that's a really important piece to understand, is early in life, you are at the mercy of your environment. And your environment is the engineer that designed your brain and your psychology. So your strengthness was born from the environment that you were in and whatever challenges that you faced. The important piece of the strengthness is a strengthness is a strength and a weakness combined. It's a strength and weakness in one. It is an attribute that has become so strong and so big that it shows up whether we really want it to or not, because that threat evaluation system has become so robust. It always is checking for threats, and there's always a way somewhere in our environment, maybe not always, but most of the time, there's a way in our environment for there to be a threat present. And if we are dysregulated or feeling upset, that two-way communication from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex no longer really becomes two-way, and the amygdala takes charge. And the amygdala goes, no, I'm under threat. When I'm under threat, nothing else matters. My physical body needs to take care of itself. And all you high-functioning, like, well, what about work? What about this? None of that matters to the amygdala. The amygdala deals with life and death. That's it. The amygdala really only cares about what's going to kill you and what's going to keep you safe. So we see threats where there may not really be threats. And if we're dysregulated, everyone dysregulated, whether you have a strengthness or had early traumatic experiences in life, when we are upset or dysregulated, we tend, or fearful, or feel like we are under threat, we are more likely to interpret a neutral face as a negative face, as a threatening face. So we, in fact, literally interpret our environments to be more threatening than they are. This is an issue because the strengthness, its whole purpose was to protect you. That's all it's ever done. That's all your strengthness has ever done, was protect you. That's all it's ever wanted to do anyway. Sometimes it always protected you. Sometimes it actually protected you, and sometimes it just thought it was protecting you and wound up screwing you over. That's the weakness side of the strengthness, right? So the strong side is the protecting factor. The weak side is the side that isn't really as protective anymore, but shows up to protect us when we really may not need it. And sometimes we make the situation worse that way. For me, I have a couple of them. I'm going to talk about two specifically because I think they help to show the process and how it shows up in people's real lives, and to show the process of how you can change these, which is the most important aspect, right? So a strengthness is an attribute that is so deeply and strongly a piece of you because it has protected you your whole life. When all the crap comes down, that's the thing that's helped you. For me, I'm going to focus on these two, what now I'm a lot and what used to be I'm too much. I'm too much was just it was a thing I believed because I was told it a bunch of times, and then I had evidence to back all of that up, and eventually I just agreed that it was true. And this all happened subconsciously without my permission. This all happened well before the age of 25 when I had a prefrontal cortex to help me think through whether the people telling me this were complete idiots or not. I just had to take their word for it because I was a child. Mine used to be, I'm too much. And now it's graduated to, I'm a lot. And the reason it's graduated is from a very purposeful effort on my part to recognize that in some situations, I bring too much to the table. I offer too much advice. I use too many words at too many decibels, that sort of thing. And so I really wanted to switch this because the thought of I'm too much is automatically negative. And when one of your strengthnesses is automatically negative, it's really hard for the strength part to show up at all. And so over time, I worked with this. Instead of allowing myself to think or say I'm too much, I switched it to I'm a lot. Because that was something that was still true, but had less of a negative connotation concerning me and my own self-worth and my own view of myself. And so now, instead of I'm too much, I have I'm a lot. That's a strengthness in itself. So let's look at the strength side and let's look at the weak side. So the weak side of I'm a lot makes me a little bit trepidatious on when I show up to certain environments. Because like I said, environment is key here. Environment is absolutely key. The environment that I walk into helps me know if I'm going to be too much or if I'm going to be just enough. Because if that environment is full of people who have been told to make themselves small or be small or had a small existence in life, I am a breath of fresh air to those people because I refuse to be small. I will be me. I will be big. If you don't like it, bye-bye. You will leave or I will leave, whatever, but I'm going to continue to be me fully and completely no matter what. That is based out of my second strengthness that we'll talk about of I'm independent. But this I'm a lot, that weak side, when I'm showing up to a place where I need to be small for one reason or another, that can be a challenge. When I show up to a place where I can be me and be fully present, fully on in very expressive environments, whether that be theater or circus or dancing or music. I get to express and be full on and experience everything as powerfully as I want and need to. That's the strong side of I'm a lot. And when I do that, I'm an inspiration to people. If you try to put me in an office and you lock me away in a cubicle for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, or God forbid a factory, which I worked at when I was 18 years old, and that was miserable. I was miserable because I am too much to do so little. It did not work for me. So the key with your strengthnesses, and this is really what I want to drive home, the key with your strengthness is your environment, okay? The things about you, your superpower, if you think about what your superpower is, that superpower has a kryptonite. That's the other side. That's the weakness side of your strengthness. Your superpower has a kryptonite. And if you look closely enough, you'll be able to identify it. And our job is to see if this strengthness is something that we want to keep or if it's not. So I decided I did not want to keep I'm too much. And I transmuted I'm too much into I'm a lot because it's similar but not the same, and it changed the connotation for me. The next one is I'm independent. I'm extremely independent. I'm hyper independent. Hyper independence is a well-known trauma response. However, that independence has saved my ass so many times. My independence is the reason I am who I am. It's the reason I don't need nobody and no thing. Except I do. I do need people and I do need things. But there's not one person or one thing that I need because I know that the universe will provide whatever it is that I need because I will go after it. I will find a way to ask for it. I'll get it. I'm independent that way. I do my best to not have anybody experience me as a burden. And that is where my I'm independent strengthness comes from. Because as a child, I often felt like I was a burden. And when I felt like I was a burden, I got feedback that made me feel very unsafe and unwanted. And being unwanted as a child makes you feel very unsafe because without your parents, you will die. So this independence with me is a strengthness as well. I get more of the strong side than the weak side of the independence piece because I've been working on it for so long. I have specifically built in my life these environmental prosthetics to help me navigate these strengthnesses. And this is the point of the entire book. Is not everybody has strengthnesses. Not everybody has these attributes that we leaned on over and over and over and over and over and over again, and we developed them so strongly, and they took such good care of us for so long that we identify with them. We identify deeply with them because they saved us. And I really mean that as literally as possible. The level of loyalty and trust and admiration, like I'm here for you, that you would have for a person who physically saved your life. That's the same level of attachment that we have to our strengthnesses, no matter how much they hurt us. So when those weaknesses do come around, they can be really, 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 really bad. But it's really, 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 really hard to change our strengthnesses because they protected us so, so, so much. So the idea is rather than changing your strengthness, and except for small little nuance changes like going from I'm too much, which is a judgment, to I'm a lot, which may be a judgment, maybe an observation, definitely a step in the right direction though. Our job is not to change the strengthness as much because it's your superpower. And I'm not trying to take away your superpower. I'm not trying to take away Superman's superpowers just because he has kryptonite. They just got to keep them away from the kryptonite. And your kryptonite is found in your environment. All of us. The thing that's going to make your strength come out is making sure that you put yourself in environments that play to your strengths, that play to the strengths of the pieces that saved you the most. I hope this is becoming clear. The pieces that saved you the most, whether that's overeating or disassociation, or whether it's fighting, or whether it's problem solving, or whether it's fawning, or whether it's people pleasing, or hyper independence, or hyper analyzing things, all of that stuff, those all can be strengthnesses that we cannot get rid of, because they have saved us so much. And pretending that we can get rid of them is a huge waste of time. Maybe somewhere way, way, way down the road, by the time we're 60, 70, 80 years old, sure, why not? We've had a lot more life between now and then to help change a few things. But those patterns that were set up in early life are the patterns that we will live through, and we will continue to play out for the rest of our lives. The less we entertain them, the more aware of them that we can push the circuitry that we're using. Instead of using a circuitry of that negative self-thought and that negative judgment of ourselves, we can change that circuitry from things like I'm too much to things like I'm a lot. I'm okay with being a lot. I'm not okay with being too much, but I am okay with being a lot. I'm also okay with being independent, even though I know that the weakness side of being independent is I do not do well putting myself in situations where I'm totally at the mercy of somebody else, whether that be their time schedule or their emotional state or whatever. I don't do well with that. I also struggle to ask for help and that sort of thing. I'm way better at it now than I used to be, but it's still difficult in times. So the bottom line of the story is our strengthnesses. What a strengthness is it's a strength and a weakness combined into one. It's just an attribute of your personality that became so well developed because of trauma that it became a defining aspect of your personality. And it's such a defining aspect of who you are that it stays prevalent even in times where it's not useful. That's why traumatized people have strengthnesses and non-traumatized people don't. Not that I'm saying there's such a thing as a non-traumatized person, but you get the point. Some of us get more than others. The key to your strengthness is recognizing that there's a good side and there's a not so good side. There's a strong side and a weak side. And the factor that's going to decide whether it's a strength or a weakness in any given moment is the environment that you find yourself in. So for those of us who grew up with lots of trauma, make sure that your environment is one that suits you. There is no right way. There is no wrong way. We were raised, we had experiences that wired our brains, quote, the wrong way. Wrong just being divergent, just not being the median. That's what wrong is in the modern world, if not the whole world forever. Wrong is just not the median. Whatever the average is, that's what's normal. What's normal is what's right. So with this, you're not normal. You're never going to be normal. Don't try to be normal. Recognize that it's the environment that is going to help you either show up strong, full of yourself, ready to go, feeling good, or make you show up in a way that's going to make you hunch over, slink your head, and walk away like a puppy with his tail between his legs because you screwed up again. That's what I got to say about strengthnesses. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really hope that this was helpful. I hope that you understand what strengthnesses are. And once you do know what strengthnesses are, then the next step is looking at your environments. Because we all exist in multiple environments, not just our house. We have our house environment, our work environment, your church environment, your social environments, all of those different things that we do. We find ourselves in multiple environments. And if you're really, really struggling real hard, then try to put yourself in an environment in which your strengthnesses will come and show up as strengths. Even if it's just for a few hours a week, volunteer doing something. That way you can exercise that strength because it's been worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, and it craves that work. It wants to protect you. That's all it's ever wanted to do, is protect you. So give it a chance to protect you or to protect other people. Give it a chance to do its job and evaluate the situation and do what it's always done for you. And it won't overrun your life. Like a puppy who doesn't get exercised and comes home and chews everything up and craps on the floor. If you take them out and you exercise them enough, they will reach a level of relative harmony and homeostasis and balance within themselves that will keep them from chewing up your shoes or chewing up a hole in the wall or in the carpet. The same is true for your strengthnesses. So I hope that you at least can think of, what is your strengthness? What is your superpower? And what is the blind spot to your superpower? What is your superpower's kryptonite? And I bet you'll find that that kryptonite is related to your environment. So take charge of your environments, understand that you are awesome, and have a great week. I will see you all next week with another episode of the podcast. And remember, stay blessed and stay uncomfortable.